witness please testify to the events that are at hand?
Call me Signifying Donkey because the Signifying Monkey got game. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. How are you today, Torrie?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
Good. Great. That's great to hear. Today, as we approach the end of Black History Month, we decided to have an interesting discussion about Frederick Douglass and his relationship with Abraham Lincoln. By the way, you can't really see it because of the way the frame is, but this is the Frederick Douglass shirt I was telling you about.
Man, that is super cool.
So I'm popping collars this morning. But yes, why don't I start by, for those who have always heard the name, such as, former President Trump, who've heard the name Frederick Douglass, but don't have no idea who he really is. Let me give a quick introduction to Frederick Douglass's life. So he was born in Maryland, a slave. And what I found interesting when I researched his life was that his master's wife taught him the alphabet. So I guess this was discovered and she was ordered to stop, with her literacy program because it was illegal to teach slaves how to read at that time. So since she had already taught him the alphabet, I found it interesting that Frederick Douglass taught himself to read. Like the alphabet was enough of a head start for him to teach himself how to read. So that was fascinating to me. And then how he became free was also fascinating. He found himself in Annapolis with his owner at some point, and he got away from his owner and somehow got a hold of a sailor's uniform and was able to disguise himself, and he made it to New York, where he was able to ascertain his freedom. So a very interesting story. And New York is where he hooked up with abolitionists and started to see the possibilities where freedom for slaves was concerned, especially when you had the Underground Railroad and so many things that were being propped up that were designed to help with the freedom movement. So Frederick Douglass is what I've learned, and I've always known this, but when I did this research, it confirmed for me, he's an integral part of not just African American or Black history. He's an integral part of American history, and it's a shame that most Americans probably only know, his most famous quotes, but don't really know about his life. So you did some research, Torrie. It'd be interesting for the audience to know some of the things that, some of the details that you uncovered.
Okay. So the war began months after the inauguration. It's the Civil War, obviously. But it's interesting to me, there were 4 parties on the ticket because in their conventions that year, they couldn't agree on who. So it was Republican, Southern Democrat, and Constitutional Union. And it sounds like Constitutional Union is kind of like the Libertarian Party now. And then the Southern Democrat was, obviously they were completely against getting rid of slavery. And then the bottom line was that Lincoln got 180 electoral votes and the Southern Democrat got 72. So it wasn't close, but if you look at the popular vote, it kind of was. And this followed on the heels.
What's interesting is that Lincoln got less than 40% of the popular vote.
Exactly.
Which is a low number. So I thought I'd jump in right there because that's a very low number, but he still won.
But it's between 4.
Right. Of course.
So take that into consideration because he got 1.866 and the next one down, which is a Democrat, not the Southern Democrat, the Democrat was 1.3. So he soundly won the popular vote. I think it was split. But anyway.
Right. That's true.
The conventions were such a mess because it followed on the Dred Scott decision, which voided the Missouri Compromise, making slavery illegal in all U.S. territories. So they couldn't decide, do we keep slavery? And I'm talking about Republicans. Do we keep slavery legal in the South and just not mess with it? And then the rest of America will be free. And so that's why they had the split, is they just really couldn't decide. And what Lincoln was behind when he was elected was an idea called the American Colonization Society. And I'll tell you more about them in a little bit because Malcolm's going to talk about Douglas and his meeting with Lincoln. But what this American Colonization Society is to send free African Americans to either Liberia or Central America. And Lincoln was for sure he agreed with that decision until.
Well, and not just that, just to back up a little bit, Lincoln invited a group of prominent African Americans to the White House, and that group did not include Frederick Douglass.
Correct.
So I think that was one of the things that probably caught Frederick Douglass's attention, because he wasn't happy about this whole Central America or Liberia situation that was being thrown out there. So yes, that's what prompted Lincoln to muscle his way into the White House, and uninvited. That's what blew my mind when I did the research, because I always had this kind of recollection of what all that was about from college, but I had it totally wrong. He wasn't invited, and I didn't realize that Lincoln had met with other people, black folks, I guess you wouldn't call them politicians, but people probably in power, people that could get votes, because that's ultimately what it was about. In the final analysis, Frederick Douglass, before going to the White House for that first meeting with Lincoln to discuss, like you said, this colonization plan, he decided that Lincoln was the best choice, and he endorsed Lincoln. So people with the right to vote at that time, obviously Frederick Douglass's opinion carried weight with certain people, especially people in the abolitionist movement. And so yes, Frederick Douglass endorsed Lincoln, and that was, when Lincoln won his presidency, Frederick Douglass endorsed, even though they had some disagreements in the beginning.
Yes. So that meeting was on August. Okay. He met with the prominent Black leaders, but not Douglass, on August 14th, 1862. Then that meeting where he elbowed his way up the stairs was August 10th, 1863. And he walked away from that thinking that Lincoln was decent and forthright, and that slavery would not survive the war, and the country would survive both slavery and the war. And that started the friendship. So 1 year later, he's asked back to the White House. And that's the meeting where he says colonization cannot work. You have to listen. And it's because of that meeting that Lincoln said, no, you're right, it's not going to work.
Right. And, what's really worth noting at this point is that the relationship that Lincoln and Frederick Douglass that they had, it kind of evolved over time.
Yes.
So I didn't get the impression that, Lincoln didn't want to be bothered with Douglass. I would like to do more research and find out what was his reason for not inviting Douglass to that meeting. There probably was a strategic, maybe the people that were in that meeting weren't in agreement with Douglass, weren't in alignment with Douglass. And so there may have been some strategic reasons for that, but whatever the case may be, they started off kind of as adversaries. And then over time, the most, amazing quote I heard, and this was shortly before Abraham Lincoln was assassinated. He actually, when he finally linked up with Frederick Douglass, showed up after Lincoln was reelected, and he wanted to talk to him, and it was hard. He couldn't, and once again, he was trying to elbow his way, because probably gatekeepers that didn't realize Lincoln actually had developed a friendship with him, were trying to keep him away. But at some point he got to Lincoln, shortly before Lincoln was assassinated. And Lincoln told him, he said, "You are one of my most trusted advisors. I trust your opinion more than anybody else's opinion at this point." When I saw that quote, it blew me away.
So of course I wrote it down. "I'm glad to see you. I saw you in the crowd today listening to my inaugural address. Douglass, there is no man in this country whose opinion I value more than yours." Those are strong words from a president, a twice elected president. "I want to know what you thought of the address." Douglass later wrote, Douglass felt himself a man among men. He felt like he'd arrived when the president said to him, "I value your opinion more than anyone else." Pretty cool.
Yeah. And, I would be remiss if I didn't mention that the creator of what was originally Negro History Week, Dr. Carter G. Woodson, was inspired to come up with Negro History Week because he felt that, people of color, African Americans in particular, African American slaves had made a significant contribution to the country, even before they were freed. And he wasn't so much, I think, trying to push Black history or African American history on the country as a whole. He wanted people of color to embrace their accomplishments. And that was the original spirit of it. But what started off as Negro History Week evolved in the Black History Month. And Carter G. Woodson's two primary heroes were Frederick Douglass and Abraham Lincoln. So there's the synergy today for us to tie those things together. I think it's a collaborative effort, because to say it's all Douglass is because all Lincoln had to do was say, get him out of here. It would have took one sentence, and Frederick Douglass had no part in our history.
Good point. Listen.
Yeah, I can't really go that route and say it's all Douglass. It was a collaborative effort, and I think the thing that is most interesting about their relationship is that, like you said, Lincoln was if we all put ourselves in Lincoln's shoes. Preserving the Union, preserving the country, preserving the Union isn't just a campaign slogan. He was trying to preserve the country. He was trying to prevent half the country from wanting to kill. That was a heck of a dilemma. And he had to juggle that with, these people have worked hard for hundreds of years under a system where they don't have freedom, can't read, they don't have any rights. And I'm going to make a dramatic change in how we manage that part of our society. It wasn't an easy, I think that's the other part of this, is we tend to simplify it and say, Lincoln freed the slaves. But clearly, based on this episode, there was a lot more going on than Lincoln just at the stroke of a pen deciding, yeah, I'll free the slaves.
Right. 100%. I agree with you. I agree that he could have said, I'm going to do my way. Now, the American Colonization Society, which of course was supported by Jefferson, Madison, and Monroe, was created in 1860. Now, this is the reason why it was created. In 1790, there were 60,000 free Black people.
Mm-hmm.
In 1830, it was 300,000. So that's a threat now.
Woo!
Now there's going to be rebellions, right? Then they're going to come to the South and say, you don't need to do this. But in between 1820 and 1843, the number that was set was 4,571. So not a ton, considering there were 300,000. And in 1843, only 40% were alive, because much like the American Indians, now you've been in this country for 200 years, you've changed, and you're used to whatever is going to hit you as far as bugs. So most of them died from malaria. It was incredibly sad that, we say Liberia was founded by freed Black slaves, but they were forced to go there. They didn't even have a choice.
Wow.
Yeah. and that, only 40% were alive because their bodies weren't acclimated. And they likened it to saying, hey, why don't you go back to England then? If you're so, you guys have been here 200 years, go back to England. If you're going to send me back to Africa, a country where my family has not been for 200 years. So it was really interesting time for sure.
Man, I'm stuck right now because I didn't expect that we would discuss Liberia in the detail that we have. And I've never discussed that with anyone before. And that kind of hit me, when you bring that up, because it's like I read a lot, but sometimes things don't really have an impact until you discuss it.
100%. And you don't know. I had no idea about this colonization thing, that it was such a the Christianity, we're going to save you.
And you know what? They don't want you to know. And that's what this movement about, the controlling local curriculums and not going into the details, because anything that might make a young white, Latino, Asian, or Black child feel some kind of guilt, we can't have that. And what's silly about it is learning your history. We've had so many conversations about our history. I don't remember you ever dwelling on any feelings of guilt.
No.
I mean, it's something we acknowledge what happened, we deal with it. And I think what absolves you and I of guilt is that we're trying so hard to get a message out to people to go into the details, to dive down in, do more research. Don't just these news stories you get on TikTok and on your social media feed. Don't just buy into everything that you're seeing right now, because most of it is not factual.
Or it's not whole. It's not the whole truth. And I agree wholeheartedly. I love, as you know, genealogy, and I've done my family history. I know for a fact over many generations and many, family tree wings that we did own slaves. And it's awful. It's incredibly awful to read those words and to look at wills and whatnot. But I can do something about that by bringing light to the fact that it did happen, and my generational wealth is because of that. My whole family, and to let's not do it again.
Yeah, I think that's kind of the problem with having this conversation, is that the people that don't want to dive down deep into the facts of our history, and they see that as CRT and woke. This is being way too woke. The people that feel that way, I think it goes back to our last week's episode, the insecurities in this country. Oh my God, I'm not successful because I'm smart. You're going to try to say I'm successful because of slavery, because of generational wealth, because my granddaddy and my granddaddy's daddy, they all had money. Well, yeah, that did have something to do with it. Because here's a point I'll make right now, and then we'll go to our winner of the week, our winners of the week. If you ever want to envision what it's like to be the average, not all, because there are some prominent African Americans in this country that are doing well, but the average Black person living in poverty or the lower end of the middle class, if you want to, as a person of, say, another race, want to imagine what that's like, imagine playing a game of Monopoly and everybody else got their money from the banker, and you didn't get any money, and you're going to try to win the game without any money, upfront money. And it's not, I'm not saying that to be a crybaby. That's the reality of the average Black person situation in this country.
It absolutely is. And the last thing I'll say about Douglass is that he laments the assassination and says, what would we have received 40 acres and a mule if Lincoln would have been alive? Because of course it went backwards after Lincoln died, but if he wouldn't have been assassinated, what would that have looked like? Which is an incredible thought, to think. But of course it's history, it's done. But Douglass did lament about that, thinking it would have been better because he was fighting for that. Lincoln was.
It absolutely would have been better. And that's why Lincoln, there probably wasn't enough security. Like if John Wilkes Booth didn't get him, somebody else would have, because of the stakes were so high, Civil War, So the reality is Lincoln's days were numbered, that as soon as he started to do anything other than allow the South to continue on with legal slavery,
right,
his days were numbered. So unfortunately, but I've gone back and forth. I have friends who say, Lincoln this, Lincoln that, some people praise him, but I'm not going to praise him. So I think after this research that we did for this show, what I realized is, maybe he had a disdain for Black people. Maybe he was willing at one point to allow slavery to continue to preserve the Union, but that's not enough for me to hate him. Like I said, he let Fred in the building. He gave Fred a seat at the table. And for me, that was worthy of discussion. The signifying winner of the week, my signifying winner of the week this week, Torrie, I told you, Master P and Snoop Dogg. I ordered their Cinnamon Toast Crunch through Amazon because I got it when it first rolled out. I got it from Safeway, and I was like, this is the best cereal I've ever had. I like cereals that aren't sweet. And I think that was part of their strategy, is they wanted to make cereals for people who can't afford the finer groceries in life to go to Harris Teeter or go to Whole Foods. We're going to make a cereal. And now what's happened is originally they got in the stores, but they did so well, they're hiding the boxes of their cereal in the storage rooms now. And there's evidence of that. So they filed a lawsuit with the help of the Honorable Ben Crump. Where would Black America, where would African Americans be without Ben Crump? He always is there when we need him most. So they filed a lawsuit against Post and Walmart for how they're basically being blocked from bringing their product to market, a product that seems to be red hot. Now, like I said, I ordered a couple boxes from Amazon, which I find to be kind of silly that, I could get it right around the corner, but now I can't find it in there. So it's sold out. But Post, I guess there's been some kind of effort with Post and Walmart, and primarily Post, to say, nah, you're not going to come in and take a huge chunk of our market share. Sorry, we got to shut this down. So I'm rooting for Master P and Snoop, because every person of color who's trying to start a business and bring a product to market, they're fighting for them. They don't need the money. They're both wealthy. They're not doing this for money. They're doing it for the future of our country, people of color. Absolutely. And I'm sure there's people who aren't people of color who like the cereal, and they want to be able to get it conveniently, So right. That's my winner of the week. I love what they're doing. And what's your winner of the week? Who's your winner of the week, I should say?
My winner is Miss Letitia James, who, of course, we know is Attorney General of New York. She did a wonderful interview. Of course, there were two wins. One, Trump owes $354 million with interest. And then yesterday, the former NRA CEO is forced to pay back the NRA $4.4 million for him just taking money for yachts and whatever. So she won both those cases. She said she's prepared to seize assets, including Trump Tower. She's like, yeah, I see that building every day. She specifically mentioned it. But what I love about her is she said, someone once told me, if you want something done, give it to a woman. So bravo. Women are really kicking Trump's hiney right now. So yeah. It's fun to see that. It's fun to see. Go women.
Yeah, go women, but you better go to the ballot. You better go to the and put your ballot in November. So that's cool that, women are organizing and strategizing and exercising their power. But if women as a whole see former President Trump as a threat, they better exercise their right to vote. And that's really what it boils down to. So great choice. I think one thing we can never highlight enough is all the people that are getting death threats because of Donald Trump's crimes. It's not right. It's not fair. When his defenders go on television and say, well, these are minor issues and this and that, and this is because of racism. It's because the prosecutor's Black and Donald Trump's white. They never say Donald Trump didn't break the law.
100%, because they can't. The evidence is there.
Right. So another great episode of the Signifying Donkey Show. I appreciate you, Torrie. You brought it strong, as you always do. Your research is invaluable, and you push me. I love the cup. The cup is wonderful. And we're out of cups. I need to reorder. I'm telling our business in front of all of our subscribers, we're out of gear. Like, I owe a few people that have been on the show a sweatshirt. I've got to get it together, Torrie. I've been kind of loosey-goosey in 2024, but it's time to get down to business. We're getting we got a new subscriber from Australia, and she left a really nice comment.
Love it. Thank you.
Which reminds me, if you like what we're doing, don't forget to subscribe. Don't forget to hit the like button. And we appreciate comments. When you give feedback and I wake up and I see I got a comment, that's what makes me keep going with this show. So we love you. Have a great weekend. Peace.
I need order in the court. I need you to quiet down. Will the witness please testify to the events that are at hand?
Stare at the Pisces, I'll stare down a Pisces.